Tennessee got some major news in recruiting last night. Five-star wide receiver Mike Matthews commits to the University of Tennessee. We'll break all that down, what this means for the Tennessee class of 2024. That and more here on your Thursday, Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into it, a Thursday Locked On Vols. I am Eric Kane, @_Kaner on Twitter, @Locked On Vols. We got a whole lot to get into today, but big news. Tennessee picks up a big-time commit last night, Wednesday night, in the form of five-star wide receiver Mike Matthews. Got Matt Ray, colleague of mine over at VolQuest.com. We're going to kick off the show today talking with Matt. And Matt, this is huge commitment for Tennessee. Gives them some positive momentum after some misses here lately, to put it bleak.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think when you look at this one, Tennessee needed this momentum on the recruiting trail. Landon Williams, Satterwhite back earlier in the month, but it's been kind of a slow month, where it was expected to be a little bit more fast-paced. I don't think the Vols are done this month by any stretch, but, to pick Mike Matthews up here and not let that one get further into the fall is big for Tennessee. Anytime you can land a five-star talent, it speaks to itself. But a guy like Mike Matthews, who you landed over Clemson, USC, Georgia, and numerous others, and a guy that you've circled as one that you had to have in this class, is big for Tennessee. It's big for Josh Heupel. It's big for Kelsey Pope. I think you talk about momentum on the recruiting trail in terms of trying to carry that from June to July. But I think looking at it in a broader picture, for Tennessee, last fall you come out, you exceed expectations in a lot of ways. You go 11-2, you win the Orange Bowl. You produce a Biletnikoff winner, first in school history. You produce 2 third-round draft picks. You needed to go pick up big names on the recruiting trail at the receiver position in this 2024 cycle. This is a second, top 125 guy that the Vols have in the class. They're battling for Amari Jefferson. They're battling for Ryan Wingo. So a lot of potential there. But to get a guy like Mike Matthews in and continue to build on what you did last fall is just huge for Tennessee.
You've been you've been really high on Mike Matthews throughout this entire process. You've been quoted in saying that he might, be one of the more athletic and best football players in this entire class. What do you like about his game specifically and how it will equate to the Josh Heupel offense?
Well, I think for one thing, a lot of times, folks tend to get lost in the rankings sometimes. Earlier this month over on the General's Quarters at VolQuest.com, people were a little irritated that Mike Matthews had dropped back to, 32nd in the On3 rankings, and I said at that time, I think it's splitting hairs in a lot of ways. And when you look at the way the rankings are set up, now it's toward a draft projection, right? It's not necessarily a potential college impact and a college fit so much necessarily. And there's not as much of a premium put on wide receivers as there used to be. There's a premium on quarterbacks, offensive tackles, and guys that can get to the quarterback. And that's what we've continued to see as a trend. So obviously the rankings are going to follow suit. But I think when you talk about college ready, overall, impact, I think Mike Matthews fits a lot of that mold. I think when you're looking at where things are currently at the high school level and not looking so much as a projection, from a two-way standpoint, there's maybe not any guy in the country that brings as much to the table as what Mike Matthews brings to the table. I think he could flip the script and be a five-star defensive back. I think he could be he obviously already is a five-star wide receiver. And one of the things I think being down around Parkview a pretty good bit this summer already, one of the things that consistently comes up with Mike Matthews is the way he carries himself off the field. When you get a guy of that caliber, it's not uncommon in that area in Georgia. That 7A classification is pound for pound, maybe the toughest classification of any in the country. But with Mike Matthews, the on-field stuff is kind of a given with him. People tend to gravitate toward what he does off the field. He's a first guy in. last guy out top. And I think that speaks volumes to who he is.
Look at Tennessee's class now. Of course, this is commit number 17, and we remember last year before kickoff, Tennessee had 21 commits, already in the boat. Of course, they added a couple more. This is now commit number 17. You pair him with Braylon Staley, who committed to Tennessee earlier in the month. He was, considered the top wide receiver out of the state of South Carolina. Pretty good start to that position. You mentioned Ron Wingo and, of course, Amari Jefferson. Kind of where else, with those two names and maybe more could Tennessee's kind of look at this position?
Yeah, I think, again, when you look at that board, Tennessee's going to get Amari Jefferson and Ron Wingo back to campus at the end of the month. The Vols are battling tooth and nail here with Alabama for Amari Jefferson towards the finish line. He has a date in mind of August 5th. That's when he's going to announce his commitment. And, he's going to take one more look at each school. I don't think anything's done there right now. I think there's a lot of things that work in Tennessee's favor in this one. I think where we sit right now, Alabama might have a little bit more of an edge. But again, I think there's a reason he's taking those, final looks at the end of the month. He's a guy that is just so detail-oriented into the process that he's going to make sure that he sees everything that he needs to see. So Tennessee will have their chance there one more time at the end of the month with Amari Jefferson, who's had a big summer playing baseball, Eric. Just made it back from Arizona and crushed the Perfect Game Showcase, has already heard from pro teams since he's been back. So a guy that's just a really natural athlete, and Tennessee going to try to close there and find a way to win, and maybe not a more important target on the board than Amari Jefferson right now in terms of that offensive skill group. Just a guy that, man, just you need to beat the Alabamas and Georgias of the world if you're Tennessee, and especially at the wide receiver position, given what I just ran off a little bit ago, that they've been able to achieve, under Josh Heupel in such a short time. And then with Ron Wingo, he'll be in at the end of the month too, at some point when things open back up there. That one's going to go the distance. There's been different leaders in that one. Texas has emerged as maybe the new favorite for now. Georgia thought they had some momentum at one point. Miami was trying to work its way in. Michigan's a team that some view as a real dark horse in it. The one consistent team has been Tennessee, and the Vols are going to be in this until the end. But he's going to go all the way to the first day of the early signing period. So, Tennessee's going to get him here for an official visit in the fall, and that'll go a long way in shaping that recruitment.
All right, Matt, last thing. You had a 5-star wide receiver commit on Wednesday night, which was huge in Mike Matthews. Now hoping to lock up another really good in-state player, been one of the leaders in the in-state for the state of Tennessee the last couple of seasons. His brothers, Nate Spillman, already on Tennessee's, obviously his roster is a class of 2023, but Edwin Spillman, the linebacker from Lipscomb Academy, set to make an announcement tomorrow. Where are the Vols in this one? Of course, it's Tennessee and Ohio State.
Yeah, Tennessee and Edwin Spillman have seemed like a long-time match, but Ohio State really worked to make things interesting there, and Edwin Spillman has really worked to keep things close to the vest. There's too many things that turn up orange there at the end of the day for me to pick against the Vols right now, but man, when you talk to folks around, the middle of the state, Ohio State really gave Edwin Spillman a lot to think about. And, here where we're at the time we're recording this, I don't think a final decision has been reached just yet. But, I would pick Tennessee if I was picking today.
A lot going on over at VolQuest.com. Recruiting never stops. There's going to be a big-time recruiting weekend at the end of the month, Matt. You got a whole lot of stuff going on every single day over at VolQuest.com, right?
Every day, and it's just starting to get fun, buddy.
All right, that is Matt Ray. You can follow him on Twitter at Matt_Ray_. Matt, as always, man, appreciate the time.
Yeah, appreciate you, Eric.
Hey, guys, real quick, I want to tell you about our friends over at LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business, and you want to be 100% certain that you have the access to the best qualified candidates available for you to hire. That's why you've got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. Over at LinkedIn Jobs, they can help you find the right people for your team faster and for free. We've all been on LinkedIn. We've all put our online resume out there with hopes of landing your dream position or even a stepping stone towards your dream position. Now the roles may be reversed a little bit, and you are owning a small business that you have a whole lot of pride in and that you're working your tail off for, but you want to make sure that you can trust it with those right people. Let LinkedIn Jobs help you find the right people that you can trust to help with your business, okay? Simple tools like screening questions. They make it easy to focus on candidates that have just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and then, ultimately hire. It's why small businesses, they rank LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus its leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Really great stuff there from Matt Ray, breaking down the commitment of five-star Mike Matthews and what it can mean for Tennessee. Welcome back in here to Locked On Vols. We are your team every single day. Shout out everydayers for making Locked On Vols your first listen. If you're not an everydayer, come back tomorrow, find out what that means. And in the meantime, go ahead and subscribe to Locked On Vols on the YouTube channel, trying to get to 8K by kickoff. We're almost there. 8K by kickoff on the Locked On Vols YouTube channel. And of course, wherever you listen to your podcast, we are available there. All right, so let's get into it. Today, Tennessee is going to be in Nashville. Today, you will get to hear, all the talk will be on Tennessee. It is the last team to take to the podium today, of course, with it being in Nashville. They wanted to kind of hold as many people and reporters and media and fans as possible. And so Tennessee going the very last slot of this week for SEC Media Days makes a whole lot of sense. At some point today, all the preseason all-conference teams will be announced, the predicted order of finish from the media, all that type of stuff that we did on yesterday's show. That'll be announced as well. And so we'll recap all of that on Thursday or on Friday's show, of course. But what should we expect from Tennessee? What's the conversation going to be like? The questions from the media in the main room, and of course to the players and breakout sessions and all that. What's going to be the important stuff that is asked and the theme for the University of Tennessee? Well, of course, you've got quarterback Joe Milton, tight end Jacob Warren, and defensive lineman Amari Thomas being the player representatives going to Nashville today. And I think the big overarching theme, and I'll get to the things in a moment, like scheduling, NIL, gambling, and of course the NCAA violation. You know that those questions will all be asked to Josh Heupel and even some of these players. But I think the big theme is going to be Joe Milton. Joe Milton's been a big topic of conversation throughout the week of SEC Media Days. He's a big conversation starter when talking about SEC football for this upcoming season. Can Joe Milton take the keys and go with this offense that Josh Heupel has built with the help of quarterback Hendon Hooker the last 2 years? And I say build, of course it was already there, but built here at Tennessee. Can Joe Milton just pick up where Hendon Hooker left off? They're not the same quarterback. They're two different guys. Hendon Hooker does a whole lot well. Joe Milton does some things well as well, and some things better than even Hendon Hooker. Can he play consistently? I think those are going to be a whole lot of the questions asked as today goes on with Tennessee down there in Nashville for SEC Media Days. So Joe Milton, I believe, is going to be, obviously he'll be there, but he's going to be a huge topic of conversation. But, that's the present. What about the future, right? You're going to get Nico questions. You're going to get Josh Heupel ask about Nico Iamaleava. You're going to get Joe Milton, who is the starting quarterback for this team, ask about his successor at some point in Nico Iamaleava. And I say some point, hopefully for Tennessee fans, it's in 2024, right? But Nico, there's going to be tons of questions, and that kind of goes hand in hand with the name, image, and likeness conversation as well, because, of course, the reported and the rumored $8 million NIL deal for Nico that got him to Tennessee, no one knows that that's true or not, but, that's the national, that's kind of the national narrative out there, right? But there's going to be some Nico Iamaleava questions. There's going to be about those losses from the team last year. Of course, Hendon Hooker is a huge loss for Tennessee. Darnell Wright was a top 10 pick at offensive tackle. Byron Young, rushing off the edge, was a draft pick for the LA Rams, and of course he just signed. You've got the Blitnikoff Award winner and Jalen Hyatt, who is no longer there. You have Cedric Tillman, who was a third-round pick as well to the Cleveland Browns, who is no longer in this offense. How can you overcome those losses, Tennessee, and who are some going to be those new players and those names that we might not know now? I'm speaking as at the media asking the questions. We might not know now, but we will know by week 3, week 4, week 5 of the SEC schedule. I think that's going to be a topic of conversation, of course. A big question, I believe, for the University of Tennessee, I'm going to hold this. I'll get to that in a moment. The defense is going to be a point of conversation, especially with Amari Thomas and Josh Heupel. You guys have heard me talk about it ad nauseum. Tennessee took steps in the right direction last year. Third down, red zone, takeaways, yada, yada, all that time. Rush defense. You've heard me say this over and over and over again. But again, from a media, I cover Tennessee like it's the back of my hand. I like to think I know everything about Tennessee, right? Because I'm close to it. I couldn't speak this way about Florida or South Carolina or Georgia or any other team. So the media personnel in there, especially from the national media who don't even cover a team, but they cover it from a broader landscape, they're just going to look at 63 points given up by South Carolina. And remember, that's the only thing about this team that was worth remembering defensively. And of course, they were one of the worst pass defenses in the NCAA last year. But again, the questions are going to be, how are you going to get better? How are you going to get better? How are you going to take that step? Tennessee's already taken a step defensively. Already has. It's just got to continue to climb. And what the answer should be is you're going to have more depth, more quality depth, and you're going to play more players. So obviously, defense is going to be a topic of conversation. But I think one of the big questions that's going to surround Tennessee today with Josh Heupel, Joe Milton, Jacob Warren, and Amari Thomas will be, is Tennessee a one-and-done team? Tennessee, an exciting year last year. Double-digit wins in the regular season, 11 wins overall. New Year's Six Bowl win over Clemson in the Orange Bowl. A Blitnikoff Award winner, leading the nation in total offense and yards per game. What should have been a quarterback who was a Heisman finalist in Hendon Hooker. A whole lot of excitement. Debuted at number 1 in the college football playoff rankings, if you remember, back in October. But is Tennessee a one-and-done team? Is Tennessee a one-and-done team? I think that's going to be huge. And it's a fair question, right? Because Tennessee's not been to this level of success in the past 15 years. But you reached it in 2022, but then you're saying goodbye to a lot of those playmakers. Of course, that's life in college football. That's turnovers, right? I mean, that's just how this thing goes. But can this team sustain that success or be close to it? That's a big question that I've been asking all offseason, and we've been talking about right here on the show. But from a national perspective, the national media members and all the Radio Row hits and the sidebars and the breakout sessions, Tennessee was last year a one-and-done situation. That's going to be a huge topic of conversation, in my opinion. So I think those are going to be the big things that Tennessee's going to be asked today. You know Tennessee's going to represent well. I don't believe Joe Milton's going to be saying he doesn't lose in the state of Florida at SEC Media Days, but I bet you he'll be asked about that. He's from Florida. He grew up in Florida. Of course, playing in the Orange Bowl last year. I think that's basically where he was coming from. But obviously, it's not hard to look at a Tennessee schedule and see where their first true road game is in week 3 of the season down at Florida. I'm sure Joe Milton will be asked about that, of course. But they're going to be coached up by Bill Martin and that sports information staff, of course. But nonetheless, I'm excited to see what Tennessee has to offer coming up later today. Joe Milton, Jacob Warren, Amari Thomas are going to represent Tennessee really, really well. And you're going to end this thing, a week's long worth of SEC Media Days with Tennessee in Nashville. And we'll come back and we'll recap it all on a Friday Locked On Vols. That's what I'm looking forward to and seeing later today for Tennessee at SEC Media Days. If you're looking for something as well, fill up those comment sections. Let me know at _Caner and at Locked On Vols. When we come back to tie a bow on this Thursday edition of the show to get you ready for Tennessee at SEC Media Days, we'll dive into the Scouting the Opponent series. We are at UTSA, one of the most intriguing games on the schedule. I'll tell you why when we return. This is Locked On Vols. All right, guys, the final segment here on this Thursday edition of Locked On Vols. Quick programming note. There will be no podcast on Monday, so I'll do one tomorrow, of course. But there will not be one on Monday. Going to take a quick trip to Chicago. Going to go to Wrigley, hang out with the wife for a weekend before football really does start. So there's going to be no episode on Monday, but we'll be back on Tuesday and, of course, the rest of next week. But I wanted to get that out there in case I forget to mention that tomorrow. Scouting the Opponent. The University of Texas at San Antonio, otherwise known as UTSA. It's one of the most interesting games on the schedule, and that might sound so outlandish when you hear it right now, when you hear it coming from my mouth. Is it going to be one of the more challenging games on the schedule? I don't think so, but it's one of the more intriguing ones because it comes after a huge game down in the Swamp. It's right before South Carolina that truly kicks off this SEC gauntlet. There are phrases and words and to describe games like this, trap game, if you will. Talent-wise, Tennessee, it's no contest, but UTSA is a pretty fiery bunch, and I know you probably heard about it. You probably saw them and done your research over the offseason, but I'm going to tell you all about UTSA and why Tennessee certainly cannot sleepwalk through this game. It's week 4, September 23rd at Neyland Stadium, of course, in Knoxville, Tennessee. As I mentioned, coming off the huge game in the Swamp at Florida the week before and setting the scene for South Carolina next week before the bye, and then Texas A&M and Alabama and all that. You get into the SEC schedule. So it's a big-time game. This is the first ever meeting between the two programs, Tennessee and the University of Texas at San Antonio, UTSA. UTSA has won the last 2 Conference USA championships, but this year UTSA is beginning its stint in the AAC, the American Athletic Conference. 11-3 was UTSA last year in 2022. It's coached by Jeff Traylor. In his 4th season, he is 30-10. And UTSA, again, I mentioned they've won the last 2 CUSA conference. That's like saying the SEC conference, because that'd be like saying the Southeastern Conference. The Conference USA conference, CUSA conference is the same thing. They've won the last, UTSA has won the last 2 Conference USA championships, and they've won 23 games over the past 2 seasons. So a very successful program is flying in here to Knoxville. Not just a payday. Tennessee better watch out, and I don't think Tennessee should lose this game, and I don't think Tennessee will lose this game. I don't think this game will be a touchdown game when it all comes down to it, but I could see UTSA putting up 28, 30, 34 points in this game. It could be a shootout, if you will. But I think Tennessee should win this game because at the end of the day, the majority of the time, bigger, faster, stronger programs, teams, depths, they take over in the second half of football games. So UTSA, get this, quarterbacked by Frank Harris. Frank Harris is entering his 7th season. You heard me correctly. His 7th season in the program. How does that work? Well, in 2017, he was a true freshman. He redshirted. In 2018, he was a redshirt freshman, but took a medical redshirt because he was recovering from an injury. 2019, I'm not even going to try to say redshirt sophomore, whatever, but he saw his first action in 2019. 2020, of course, played, but it was the COVID year. Played in 21, 22, 23, or 22, and then getting this COVID year back. This is his 7th season in the program, his 5th as a starting quarterback, and over the course of his career, he's thrown for over 9,000 yards and scored 74 and passed for 74 touchdowns. He has rushed for over 1,800 yards and scored 24 touchdowns. He's a dual threat guy. But what a story. 7th year quarterback. Yes, you heard that right. Last year, he threw for over 4,000 yards, 32 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. Dude's a baller. He really is. And that offense last year, it led Conference USA in scoring with 36.8 points per game, 2nd in total offense of 476 yards per game. It was 12th in total offense in the country and 14th in scoring offense in the country. So, again, you talk about high-powered offenses. UTSA is right there right now under, of course, head coach Jeff Traylor and quarterback Frank Harris here of late. Former OC, of course, a lot of success. Will Steen, he was plucked up by Oregon this past offseason. So Justin Bark has transitioned from special teams coordinator over to offensive coordinator for this year. You do lose, I believe, one of your only 2 losses on offense, I believe, if my math is correct. There's only 11 spots on offense, so, it's not that hard. But a big loss at wide receiver is Akira Franklin, who led the squad with 94 receptions, 1,136 yards, and 11 touchdowns. He transferred to Ole Miss after spring practice this spring, so that's a big loss. But you do bring back 2 other really productive receivers in Joshua Cephas, 87 receptions, 985 yards, and 6 touchdowns, and DeCorian Clarence, 51 receptions, 741 yards, with 8 touchdowns last year. So you bring back some production there. You bring back 4 returning starters on the offensive line. You bring back your leading rusher, Kevion Banks, or Barnes at 845 yards, 6.4 yards per carry. And this is actually an offensive line in a run game that was 4th in Conference USA last year with 175.6 yards per game. So very balanced attack, throwing and rushing the football. Very similar to Tennessee, if we're going to be completely honest with how they kind of do things. So the offense loses a key wide receiver, but brings everybody back, including, wait for it, a 7th-year quarterback in Frank Harris. So they're going to score points. No doubts about it. Defensively, you do return 7 starters, so you bring back a lot, but not as much on offense. Defensively, it was pretty stout last year. 25.9 points per game is what it gave up. That was 3rd in Conference USA. 387 yards per game. That was 4th in Conference USA. 144 yards given up on the ground. That was 3rd best in the conference. 243 yards through the air. That was 6th best in the conference. Really nice prospect on the edge. His name is Trey Moore. 8 sacks and 18 tackles for loss as a freshman last year. He'll be a guy that the Tennessee tackles will have to watch out for. Inside linebacker Jerome Ligon, 90 tackles. He was the leading tackler last year. He returns. Defensive lineman Brandon Brown's a guy that's a standout. He was an honorable mention All-Conference USA player last year. You bring in LSU transfer Joe Evans to help in the interior of the defensive line as well. A cornerback, Nick Troy Fortune. Was formerly a 3-year player, a 3-season player at West Virginia. He came over before last season, and he'll lock down one of the cornerback spots. And former 2-time first-team All-Conference USA safety Rashad Wisdom returns after injury as well in that secondary. So, again, UTSA sounds pretty decent on paper, right? Now, you're walking into Neyland Stadium. You're walking into an SEC program. It's not going to be that easy. But what to expect? Tennessee should take over this game and win in the second half, in my opinion. Tennessee could rout them from the beginning, but I do expect UTSA to score some points. And for, this is a game that Tennessee can't afford to sleepwalk through. Tennessee will be favored by probably 8-10 points. I haven't checked it out right now. Tennessee will be favored in this one by at least a touchdown, in my opinion. And Tennessee will win, in my opinion. But you can't sleepwalk through this because of what's to come, especially a rematch with South Carolina. That is the scouting, the opponent's portion of today's show. We'll continue. Depending on how audio-wise and everything I get at SEC Media Days, we might take a break for this tomorrow, or we may bring it back in segment 3 tomorrow, just depending on what I get. I plan on being over in Nashville early sometime this morning and being there for Tennessee, and then, of course, coming back, making it a day trip. So it'll be a late recording time Thursday night, but we'll get you a podcast out there recapping everything that was Tennessee at SEC Media Days on Friday. Again, a reminder, no show on Monday. I'll be out of town, but we'll be back on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of next week. Appreciate you guys, as always, for making Locked On Vols your first listen. You everydayers, couldn't do it without you. If you're going to Nashville for SEC Media Days, stay safe, and say hi if you see me. This is Locked On Vols.